Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Wendy Ashmore. UCR Professor of Anthropology. Dr. Ashmore's interests center on the social use and understanding of space. Since the mid-1970s, she has studied the architecture and settlement patterns of the ancient Maya and neighboring peoples through archaeological field research in Guatemala, Honduras, and Belize. Her consideration of the social and symbolic aspects of spatial organization has been expressed in the archaeology of households, the analysis of civic planning in cities and towns, and the study of ancient landscapes. Most recently, she has turned attention to how gender affects and is affected by architecture and other kinds of spatial order. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Wendy Ashmore.
Thank you, Stephanie. I want to start by saying hi and thanking Stephanie and Josh and the whole Saga team for inviting me to, what?
I said indeed.
Oh, I said, and who did I forget? But for inviting me to be part of this. I know you put a lot of work in it. You should know that when they were organizing this, they wanted it to be a secret from Tom. I'm Tom's wife. And so they came to ask me some things, and they said, you must not tell him. And I said, okay. So we went about things, and they'd send me things for comments and so forth. And I kept saying, when can I tell him? This is getting really awkward. And I thought my main job would be, part of being secretive was to make sure he didn't make plans for today that would take him somewhere. So I'm pleased that it all worked out. And he was truly, when Stephanie and Josh presented him with a formal invitation or formal announcement in a letter. I wasn't present, but he said he opened it and was just stunned. So as his wife, I can tell you that he continues to be stunned. I wanted to start off, I have something that pertains to the abstract, but I wanted to start off with a couple of anecdotes, if I may, that involve Tom. They're personal, but also professional. I first met Tom, many of you know this story, I first met Tom on a train in the early 1970s when he was commuting from New York to teach at Temple University in Philadelphia, and I was beginning graduate school at University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. I lived in central New Jersey at the time. And, each of us would do this commute regularly, but one particular day, I have no idea what day it was, he was sitting across the aisle or something, and he turned to me, and he remembers this better than I do, but the rest of the story, don't listen to his version. He said, is that an interesting book you're reading? And I said, I proceeded to tell him the story of, it was an archaeology book, and I proceeded to explain archaeology to him as if he were my grandfather or a cousin or someone at a cocktail party who knew nothing about archaeology. And, with a perfectly straight face and not, I don't think, condescending, but when it got close to where he got off was a stop before where I got off. So before he got off, we exchanged names, and I told him mine first, and I was a non-entity in the profession at that point. And he told me his name, and I went, sorry, Stanley and Christine. Oh, shit. Because I was reading things that this man had written about archaeology, and I thought, I've made such a fool of myself. I never want to see him again. So I succeeded in that for quite a long time. We met again through other circumstances, professional circumstances, and then when I moved to the University of Pennsylvania to teach, after 12 years teaching elsewhere, which you'll hear about, he had just written a book for some Venezuelan colleagues who wanted him to write a book about Mesoamerica, and he said, this is what he tells me, he said, but I've never worked in Mesoamerica, and they said, it's okay, we like what you write. So he wrote the book, and then he submitted the manuscript to them, and they said, okay, so now we'll need some illustrations. I don't have any illustrations. I've never been to an archaeological site in Mesoamerica. So he calculated who he might be able to ask for pictures. And so for various reasons that he can explain better than I can, he decided to ask me. So he called me or emailed me or something and said, could I borrow some slides to make these illustrations? And I thought, this is the guy who's, well, So I lent him pictures, and he said, the least I can do is take you out to lunch. So he took me out to lunch at a place that was closed. So, yeah. So I was still quite intimidated by him. I was very senior, and I was familiar with things he had been writing, and I thought, I'm scared of him. But after a while, after we were going out to lunch and dinner, and I came to trust him, I told him about the train, and I explained my version of it, and he said, "That was you?" Truly, he did. So then, things happened. And when I told some friends of mine who had been friends since graduate school that I was seeing Tom Patterson, one of them responded, "You mean the semi-Marxist?" And I said, yeah. So they're Tom's good friends with them now, her and her husband, and he's always asking, what is a semi-Marxist? Yeah. So that's part of the story. But the second anecdote is I was asked, the World Archaeological Congress put together an encyclopedia of global archaeology. And it's the finished work on a bookshelf. I haven't seen it, but it's probably almost as long as this row of chairs. I mean, it's just humongous. No single owner can have one. And the people who were editors for the volume who got free ones thought, what am I going to do with this? But one of the editors of the biography section, who happens to be a good friend of both Tom's and mine, independently originally, asked me if I would do, for the theory section, a biography of Tom Patterson. And I said, don't you think that's a little incestuous? And he said, oh, no. He said, you know him well, you know his career well, I think you're the perfect person to do it. So I said, okay. So I did a short piece. I mean, it's an encyclopedia entry. And so in the course of doing this, it enabled me to look back at what he'd written and his career, and I sort of interviewed him about turning points and so forth, and I learned a lot about him and the changes in his life over time, and I was learning who he was as a person already quite well, but this was, for me, very informative. And one of the things that's in the encyclopedia entry, when Yolanda was talking about with her classes, asking people to consider what's going on in the world around you relative to what you're learning in class, one of the things that Tom told me was an epiphany for him was when he was kind of extended. He can correct me if I get this wrong. He's not smiling. Was when he was doing fieldwork in Peru in the early 60s and thereafter, that he had gone to the field with all these anthropological and archaeological models, interpretive schema, and so forth. And what he was seeing in the society around him was a lot of turbulence, instability, inequity, violence, things that were not meshing with what he was learning from mainstream theory and interpretation. And so together with, I think, a turning point for him was, a particular turning point was the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago, which was exceedingly violent, and again was not, he couldn't relate that to what people said he would be finding in ancient societies in Peru. And I think those things, as I understood it from talking to Tom, really turned him to thinking, and around then, he had begun reading Marx, and things began to make more sense. So for me, my experience of Tom is quite parallel to Christine's and Yolanda, both of whom have known him longer than I have, except for the train, which doesn't count. But he has had a profound impact on me in ways that are broadly similar to the impacts he's had on you, about knowledge production, about theory, about standpoint, about the importance of people, about the importance of social inequality and social justice. And I have not become a Marxist, sorry, but we coexist quite well, I think, more or less. He's laughing, but he's not smiling. So, anyway, those are my those are my, oh, the other thing I wanted to bring up was in response to something that Jonathan Dubois said this morning about Tom's writing. Those of you who don't know him well, he writes all the time. It gives him the greatest pleasure to be able to think things through and put them into prose. And he will grapple with an idea. Bob, was it you was telling me about, he said, what is wealth? No? Okay. And he would take these concepts that we use all the time and he'd decide to examine them, what the roots of the use of the term were and what the meanings attached to them were and how people were using them. So he takes things that others take for granted and then he peels them apart, like the onion, puts them back together, and makes progress in knowledge production and in theory. What that works out to be in practice is that he, around the house, he mutters. He walks around. His end of the house is in what? The house is in a square around a central patio, and his office is diagonally across from mine, so we don't hear each other. We visit each other often while we're working, but he will come out to my study, and he'll just sit down and just start ruminating, and then he'll be walking through the house, mumbling, and I'll say, okay, he's writing. But this is so productive, this writing and this constant thinking about stuff, that for a long time, and particularly before he became chair of the department here, when his time for writing was significantly reduced, he used to publish a book a year. I learned very early not to try and emulate that. So he is an incredible scholar, an incredible colleague, a wonderful husband. You don't have to share that. But all of the kudos that he's getting today are absolutely well earned. He won't hear that. He just won't hear that. I'll tell him again when we get home. So what I wanted to talk about in the formal talk, it's not very long, is graduate curricula, that stasis is not an option. That phrase will become clearer in a moment. About standpoint, theory, and curricula. In teaching undergraduates, which we both love to do, I see, and I won't speak for anyone else, but I see the goal there is of helping people open their eyes to the world around them, to think critically, and to be prepared to be in the world, better prepared to be in the world on graduation, or before graduation, but to just have the blinders come off and see the variety that's in the world. Graduate programs, however, are somewhat different. That goal is still sort of there, but graduate programs aim to teach new colleagues and aim ideally for them to surpass their faculty, teachers, and mentors at disciplinary and wider theory and at professional practice. Before I go any further, I forgot there are 2 slides I wanted to show you that probably few of you have seen of Tom in action. This is when he was at Temple on the picket line. You're not going to comment?
I'm trying to remember which one it was. We struck so frequently.
But, what?
It was 86 or 90.
So anyway, he's there happy. And the other one that probably most of you haven't seen and it won't register with you. I have to tell you that what you're about to see was a choice he made. I had nothing to do with it. I didn't force it on him. His customary palette and his customary clothes, he always wears his khaki pants, the same shoes, and he wears upper garments that are either black, brown, gray, occasionally blue. And so he bought this. I had to take a picture of him because nobody would believe me. But he's only worn it a couple times, I think. So once. That was it. So you've seen it. And the other picture I wanted to show you was not about Tom, except indirectly, that he is held in wide esteem. Certainly this is tremendously meaningful for him, that you would honor him with this recognition. He is, I will say it again, he was stunned. He can speak for himself, but my observation is he was stunned, but he's been honored before. And at one of them, In 2008, at the American Anthropological Association, one of the speakers was so our keynote speaker today has a long history of Okay, so back to the paper. So the point of graduate programs is to help to train students to surpass their mentors and teachers, to be better than we are. You all have tremendous creativity and tremendous possibilities, and so we want you to be better than us, not clones of us, but better than us, more thoughtful than us. So I want to talk about some graduate curricula, and including the one at UCR, graduate programs. Having taught at 2 other universities before coming to UCR, I can attest firsthand to the pressure for making programs stronger, one means for which is curricular change. In this presentation, I describe 1, comparisons of 3 different programs, 2, at UCR, the genesis and development of the year-long core theory courses, and 3, the reasons why continued change in core teaching is both inevitable and desirable. Discussing the specific core theory sequence of 2001 and 2 through 2014 and 15, I draw on words Tom Patterson offered as keynote speaker for the 21st annual James Young Colloquium in February 2001. Those will come up in a minute. My first faculty experience was at Rutgers in New Jersey, the State University of New Jersey, where I taught from fall 1980 through spring 1992. The New Brunswick main campus, there are also campuses at Newark and Camden, comprised 5 separate, all these choices. Come on. At Newark and Camden, at opposite ends of the state. But the main New Brunswick campus had 5 separate residential colleges. You can see them highlighted here. The point of this will come up in a minute. Rutgers College on College Avenue for men, Douglas College for women, Livingston College, which recruited and encouraged and was aimed at students were the first in their families to go to college and was very outreach oriented. That's Rutgers, Douglas, and Livingston. Plus University College, which focused on night students, people who were working full-time and could only take classes in the evening. And then Cook College, which was focused on environmental concerns. Those 5 colleges all exist. Separate departments separate iterations of most departments existed separately on those campuses. Anthropology departments existed in all units except Cook, whose equivalent was the Department of Human Ecology. Students could take courses in any one of the 5. Are you confused? I was. One time, Will Andrews, a colleague in New Orleans, visited the campus, and 2 of us took him to lunch, and he asked, how does this work? The entire lunch was spent trying to explain it to Will, and he left more confused than ever. Anyway, so why is that relevant here? In 1981, the university merged equivalent New Brunswick departments from disparate locations. Anthropology moved to Douglas campus, with human ecologists still at Cook. So faculty had now greater opportunity to interact and share ideas spatially closer. That was before a lot of internet. I mean, I think I had internet at the end of when I was at Rutgers, but it was maybe. Not maybe? Late 80s? No. I'm a Mac person. In the 90s, yes. So anyway, anthropology graduate students began coursework with courses bridging the customary subfields, plus human ecology. In the mid-1980s, as I recall, the core required sorry, I'm missing this slide. It's like Carol with her car. As I recall, the core required of first-year students shifted to 2 pro-seminars introducing subfield combinations. So there were sociocultural and linguistic anthropology, biological anthropology, and archaeology sometimes. And I taught once with physical anthropologist Susan Cashel with a syllabus ordered by anthropological issues that both her subfield and mine could address. The miracle of this was we talked about the topics before the summer, and when we got there in the fall, neither one of us had made a syllabus. So it was completely separate, but it worked. In all the pro-seminars, the goal was some degree of integration across the whole of anthropology. But in my view, the integration was not sustained. It didn't go beyond those, and it was the ability to build cohorts. The ability to build cohorts through those pro-seminars is not as strong as I've seen elsewhere. It may be stronger now, but I don't know. The same courses exist today. I looked at the catalog, or I looked at the website. But now, I saw one of the syllabi, now each consists of a faculty member introducing their own work. So it's a semester of individual faculty members, and the degree of integration across that, I have no idea. I'm not criticizing, that's all I know. The ingredients are there, certainly, for articulation, but I wish I could sit in on some of the presentations. I did look at the syllabus. And I enjoyed and learned very much in my time at Rutgers, but came away wanting more in terms of graduate programs, theory, and articulations. In the fall of 1992, I joined the faculty at the University of Pennsylvania, where I had received my PhD a decade before. The graduate program requirements for first-year students then were the same as I'd had when I was a student. They were. That's why in the abstract it says Penn, not so much. A semester-long course in each of the customary subfields. Okay, let's keep moving forward. There's Penn. The department is in the University of Pennsylvania Museum, the inset photo. It's located right. It's located across from the field. Okay. A benefit was that all first-year students went through the set of courses together across subfields, and strong student cohorts were established. But the individual courses and instructors tended not to relate their subject matter to that of others in the program. The first year that I was there, they had something where the whole cohort would write 3 papers over the course of the year on particular books that were not necessarily their subfield. So there was some of that, but I think they stopped doing that. When I got there, they certainly weren't, when I arrived as a faculty member. So they were siloed. Each of the subdisciplines was separate. My gentle insurrection with this was to assign course papers in my archaeology class that would assess recent publications that crossed subfields, and thereby to acknowledge the other courses students were taking. For example, several times I asked students to consider the noted anthropological archaeologist Patty Jo Watson's distinguished lectures to the American Anthropological Association, quote, archaeology, anthropology, and the culture concept. Archaeology, cultural anthropology, broader things. The goal was integration and articulation. I wanted them to see across subfields. I shared my syllabi with colleagues and invited them to work something similar into their own core courses. Interested, but not convinced. Again, I enjoyed and learned much from my time on the Penn faculty, and again, I hoped for more. In July 2000, I happily accepted recruitment to UCR, as did Tom. So many aspects of the campus excited me, from the diverse student body bringing varied standpoints to learning, to the chancellor at the time, Roy Orbach, whom you see here in this tiny photo, with his visions of inclusiveness and community outreach. He's a physicist, but he had a vision of the community. At third, to the wonderful cadre of colleagues I would be joining, some of whom I knew already, some of whom I hadn't met, and many of whom are not here anymore. Anyway, when Tom Patterson and I arrived, the department and faculty were preparing for change. With then new faculty hires and then recent faculty departures, the constellation of standpoints was shifting. Graduate enrollments were low. Admissions sometimes were 1 a year, sometimes 2 a year. So the critical mass was not present. First-year students were required to take Anthropology 250A, the first of a sequence. That course was followed by 250B and 250C in a year-long sequence, but as I recall, 250B and C were not required and could not be taught every other year, probably for low graduate student numbers. Other graduate seminars were few, and the much Much graduate coursework was accomplished by independent study reading courses or by enrolling in upper division undergraduate courses with the graduate add-on ANTH 292. I saw potential opportunities, but Tom Patterson had a vision. One of his first assertions as chair, and referring to much more than the graduate program, was, "Stasis is not an option." Let me quote briefly from that February 2001 James Young keynote. Quote, "Anthropologists have traditionally engaged with the pressing social issues of the day. However, they were not always on the same side, nor should we expect them to hold the same values and beliefs, given the diversity of their backgrounds, personal histories, and experiences. I would also contend that these differences refract in complex ways the foundational theories that individuals adopt when they conduct anthropological research, talk about the discipline, and explore its relations with other fields of inquiry." A little later on, he says, "I have spent the better part of the last 35 years," now it would be a lot longer than that, "learning to talk with historians and to frame questions about social relations and the patterns of evidence they leave in ways that allowed that historians to apply documentary materials to answer my queries. These conversations were easiest when we shared the same foundational theory. This allowed us to elaborate and refine particular lines of argumentation. The conversations were less satisfactory when the individuals who were contemptuous of social theory, denied that they used theory in their arguments, or valued eclecticism, which allowed them to pick and choose randomly from different foundational theories without paying any attention to inconsistencies and internal contradictions in the views they cobbled together." He also writes long sentences. The discussions were more satisfactory when even though our foundational theories differed, we were clear about the premises and implications of the different theoretical frameworks we used. In other words, conversations with individuals with whom you disagree can also be a thought-provoking learning experience, provided you know how they are framing their statements and arguments. They force you to develop a textured appreciation of the similarity of differences and silences of different theoretical perspectives. He goes on, "Theoretical traditions, the historical functionalism of Emile Durkheim or Kent Flannery, the evolutionism of Lewis Henry Morgan or Julian Stewart, the liberalism of Herbert Spencer or Robert Redfield, or the historical materialism of Karl Marx or V. Gordon Childe have a profound impact on how we understand the world. At some level, the particular body of social theory, At some level, the particular body of social theory we use determines what constitutes relevant data out of the bits and pieces of information we collect. They help us frame questions we ask of those data and organize our responses to those inquiries. At another level, they provide us with a means for evaluating answers, for determining whether we have constructed an acceptable or adequate explanation of the data we used. At still another level, they provide us with ways of using data to expand and or modify existing explanations. In the fall of 2000, a committee convened to develop a new proposal for a new set of core theory courses, ANTH 200A, B, and C. This is because we're not angels. There's another photo that I can't find of the three of us on the same couch, just exhausted. It's much funnier. That would together examine the foundational theories and their expression across the subfields in addressing matters of the human experience. The proposal agreed on by the faculty defined 15 potential topics, 5 for each of the quarters. And each was accompanied by a set of questions that could be posed across subfields. I'm not going to read the paragraphs, but tell you the topics that were approved in the proposal. First, diversity, foundational theories, the importance of history, human origins and the origins of human society, the origins of inequality, can you hear me in the back? Am I too far from okay. The origins of inequality, class and state formation, theories of culture, language, culture, social structure, and history. 8th, knowledge systems. 9th, aesthetics and performance. 10, capitalism, imperialism, and decolonization. 11, ecology and environment. 12, work, the transformation of labor and the built environment. 13, imperialism and globalization. Are you tired yet? 14, contemporary concerns with inequality, violence, and human rights. 15, the politics of representation and the politics of producing, distributing, and consuming anthropological knowledge. Some of these topics have come up in talks today. The central goals were integration and articulation of the disciplines, situating anthropology within wider historical frameworks of social theory and practice, and emphasis on active engagement of anthropology with the social societies within which we live and work. Social injustice and social difference underlay many of the topics. Activism. With the first offering of this new sequence in 2001-2, taught jointly by Tom Patterson at the right in the photo, Michael Carney at the left of the photo, and me somewhere else, it was clear that some topics merited more than 1 week's discussion. Most prominently, foundational theories were allotted 3 to 4 weeks. I no longer have the initial syllabus, to be more exact. At the same time, we were ambitious for this exciting new venture. Those of you who are taking or have recently taken core cringe. At the same time we were ambitious for this exciting new venture, not only did we require exams at the end of each quarter, but also a paper. Yeah, oh my God. And the initial readings lists were even heftier than any recent cohorts had impinged on them. Trust me. Enrollees that first year worked hard with excellence and let us know that the exam and paper were simply too much. So Tom, Michael, and I learned. Another ambitious and inclusive feature that year, this reminds me of the Rutgers Pro Seminars, another ambitious and inclusive feature that year was to invite individual faculty to discuss their research for an hour of the 3-hour seminar. Great idea, and presentations were really engrossing. But the latter proved a challenge as interest and discussion lasted engagingly well beyond that hour slot, so the central work of the course was not getting done. Again, we learned. Over the next dozen years, the order and time weight of topics varied, especially in the specific, okay, before I do that paragraph. In the original as now, Tom, each of us got teaching credit for 1 quarter, but we were present every quarter in almost every class. And whoever was the instructor of record for that would often start discussions on a particular topic. And Tom, whom, if you've taken a class from him, you know has encyclopedic knowledge that he can bring to his command at, without searching. And so yeah. So over the next dozen years, the order and time weight of topics varied, especially as the specific faculty varied. Faculty shifted. What we saw as a key element here is that a trio or a pair of faculty collaborated each year in teaching. Each got 1 teaching credit, but we all sought to be there each time every quarter. We felt that, among other things, we could demonstrate that we had different standpoints and thereby license students more explicitly to agree with each other and with us in ways that Tom described in remarks cited earlier. I cannot tell you how many times I left core theory saying, if Michael says robust theory one more time, but I loved him. So the experiment has proven productive and I believe intellectually satisfying. Students who feared theory have grown more and more comfortable and proactive in pushing themselves in their work, as many papers have indicated today. And their critical reading, pushing themselves in their work and their critical readings of others' research. They have, in my view, come to see the historically contingent conversations in which they are involved, that you're all active participants in knowledge production and theory evaluation. Times change, though, and I have to have this one. Last year, the cohort presented the 3 core faculty with a plaque recognizing their contributions in this course. And Yolanda couldn't be there at the at the event, so I just morphed her into the picture. But there's Christine and Tom holding the plaque. Yeah, right.
Why is she teaching?
For the plaque. So anyway, we seem to have in here a gratuitous image of, I thought we had another image of Tom, but it's okay. So times change and new voices are needed. The faculty expensive year-long presence in Anthropology 200, as much as we have enjoyed it, may not be sustainable right now with rising enrollments, rising graduate student bodies as well as undergraduate student bodies, with the current teaching loads on faculty, and because other voices in the department want to have a role in this set of courses. So much as we have enjoyed it, it may not be sustainable right now. In some ways, circumstances now. Oh, I forgot to fill out that X. Sorry. Much as we have, in some ways, circumstances now are akin to those of 2000. Faculty composition has changed. Many people who were here in 2000 have left to retirement or other reasons. But we've had an influx of new faculty. And we're pleased to say that we haven't, I can't divulge, many of you know we had a Mesoamerican search, so we will have another new faculty member. Last year we have 2 new faculty, there you are, Dr. Becker and Dr. Na. So our faculty is growing and it's diverse in different ways. Faculty composition has changed, and with that, the standpoints of the program. Unlike 2000, however, we now have a critical mass of smart, talented graduate students who are well bonded as a mutually supportive group. I believe they and those who follow will remain so as they move forward in their careers. It seems like the time to say again, stasis is not an option. And while I may disagree with some of the specifics, change is a good thing. So I have hope for the future. I have one more comment before I entertain questions, and that is that it gets back to Tom writing, and we share our manuscripts with each other, which I was terrified at first of doing, but he's a good guy. He'll tell me when something is, yes, yeah, that's okay, and then the next draft, oh, that's much better, and he gives me specific comments. But when he was writing his book on the Inland Empire, all the books he's written since we've been together, he's shared with me manuscripts, and I've commented, usually not deeply substantively for other reasons. But I agree with what he was saying, but as the book on the Inland Empire was near completion, at the end of individual chapters, and then again as they neared the last chapter, so much of the book was about challenging histories and capitalist struggles, capitalist impositions, and the bad things that have gone on with railroad competition and Native Americans being uprooted, and a whole range of things that I'm not doing justice to here. I kept saying, is there no good news? So the last chapter has a little bit of hope in it. Yeah. So anyway, his focus is struggle, his focus is amending social injustice and bringing everyone into the world. With that, I thank you, Tom. He's almost grimacing. Are you going to give me a kiss? Are you going to give me a kiss? You kissed Yolanda and Christine.
Thanks, sweetheart.
Absolutely.
I was very honored when I was asked to join the Troika to teach core theory, and I remember, Christine, remember the year that he was gone? Oh. And he did the first part, Western intellectual tradition, and then all the philosophers and everything. And Christine and I would have to have our own pro seminar before we went into class, because he said, what did that mean? We were trying to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of the children, because, the children. I know grandchildren, you all know that. Of Tom, and we thought, holy, what is this? And Tom would just whip through it. So Tom, we learned a lot.
Yeah, I learned a lot from you and the students.
And the students, yeah.
My colleagues.
Any questions or comments?
You present the first time you did the course sequence, and how overwhelming it was to everybody, right?
Yes.
And I do remember seeing people walking out of the classroom looking shell-shocked. It's like, oh, that's what PTSD looked like.
They did.
But what everybody clued each other in on it
Mhm.
and worked together. You know, everyone worked together to get it to be
Mhm.
much, you know, just immensely better the second time.
Mhm.
It was just incredible.
And each time,
And
it gets
each
refined
time.
each time.
Yeah, and that reminds me of what we did when we were part of it,
Mhm.
which was that, you know, we'd unpack it afterwards, right?
Mhm.
We'd have this 3-hour class, and then just by happenstance, we'd end up all sitting around Tom's desk and the table in Tom's office, and just unpacking what happened in class that day, and where we thought there might be some spongy areas and that we'd have to clean up, and, you know, where the things were heading. And so it became a seminar for us afterwards. It was really wonderful.
I agree with you. I mean, I've learned so much from Tom. I have more courage in what I write. I write more easily. I don't mutter as much as he does. Too many commas, yes, I'm the comma lady. But
You need more periods.
yeah, or broken up sentences. He has this very, what I see as a very Germanic writing style. So it's a complicated multi-phrase, multi-clause subject, and at the end there's a little verb. There was one cartoon that I found that I almost put in and then resisted because I thought somebody might be offended. So I'll just tell you and you can like it or not. It's, I think, from Bizarro, the comic strip Bizarro. And it's a closed door with a, you know, glass thing on it, and there's a name on the door. I don't remember what it says, but what it says is the office of where things get straightened out. And the caption is, "Don't we wish we knew where that was?" And my subcaption for that would be, "Tom's office. The door was always open. You could go in and talk and complain and be excited and get chocolate."